Hi, welcome back guys, this is your friend the fanfic friend with fanfiction. This is What If Deku forged his heroic path from the depths. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get to Intoathea fanfic. Aizawa let out a tired grunt as he walked towards the juvenile detention center in downtown Mustafu. He had hoped that he wouldn't have to do any more visits after spending the morning seeing potential students for UA. In fact, he had already unpacked his favorite yellow sleeping bag after lunch. Then Principal Nezu called and informed him of an interesting applicant, a juvenile delinquent that was well known in the area if the police reports were to be believed. My head's already hurting, he grumbled as he entered the building. This kid'll be a problem child, I'm sure of it. He stopped at the front desk, a thick sheet of bulletproof glass separating the officer from him. His eyes flickered to the 3 cameras in the lobby, then to the heavy metal door set into the wall beside the window. At the broken bar he knocked on the glass until the officer turned on the intercom. My name's Shouter Aizawa, he said. I'm here to speak with the JDC administrator, about one of your wards. Yes, sir. Go ahead and have a seat. Captain Tatsumoto will be with you momentarily, the officer said with a bored drawl. Aizawa felt his eye twitch as he moved to sit in one of the wooden chairs that lined the walls. He pulled out the file on the boy and began looking through it. Several counts of assault, truancy, and vandalism. A broken bar. Why do you want this kid in UA, Nezu? He closed the file as the metal door opened and a man with beer gut stepped out. He was dressed in a fairly decent dress shirt and slacks, and his arms still held an impressive amount of muscle. He was bald, with a neatly trimmed goatee that was specked with silver hair. Mr. Aizawa, he greeted, his voice deep and quiet as he bowed respectfully to the off-duty hero. Thank you for coming in on such short notice. Aizawa returned the bow. You was always willing to go the extra step for applicants who show promise. Tatsumoto nodded. Let us have this conversation in my office, he says, turning back around and entering the metal door. Aizawa followed closely behind him, looking around the long hallways. He watched as small groups of teenagers in grey jumpsuits walked down the halls, being escorted by officers from one spot to another. Several doors lining the walls were open, revealing entire dorms lined with metal bunks and a few metal tables bolted into the ground. Most of the boys in the facility were talking in hushed whispers at the tables, half watching the TV mounted on the wall inside of a metal and glass box. They climbed 2 flights of stairs, showing similar views on each floor until they reached a heavy metal door with a small window in it. Here we are, Tatsumoto said, unlocking his office door and inviting Aizawa in, who noted the window that showed what looked like a rec yard. I know what you're thinking, erasure, Tatsumoto began as he closed the door behind them and took a seat behind his desk, motioning to one of the brown leather chairs sitting in front of him. Aizawa sat down as he once again pulled the file, and while I'm sure you've seen his profile and record, I want to assure you that those days are behind him. It still raises some concerns, Aizawa said. The last charge was barely a few weeks ago in this very facility. The boys in this facility are all volatile, and you can see in the court brief that it was ruled as self-defense. He leaned forward. The boy he fought was attempting to run the pod he was in. He was taking people's commissary against their will. Guess he bit off more than he could chew. It seems that way I broken bar. Aizawa sighed. His file says he's been in and out of this facility since he was 5. Tatsumoto sighed. Yes, I'll never forget that first day of his broken bar, he muttered. A boy of 5 getting brought in after he admits to killing his father. He shakes his head. Self-defense after the bastard killed his mother, and then went for him. He stayed here for a week before the cops dropped the charges and placed him in foster care. Aizawa's eyes widened at the explanation. Poor kid broken bar, he muttered. I'm guessing that this is probably the root of the reason that he's been back here since. Partly. The other part is the people he hung around, not only in here but at school. To put it simply, he became friends with delinquents, and followed their lead. Although he's always been respectful to staff, his relationship with others his age and almost all of his foster families usually lead to one or more spectacular brawl. His file says he's been in and out of foster care. Could you elaborate on that? The trauma he went through as a child, paired with his newfound disdain for parental figures, made it difficult for any foster family to connect with him. He's ran away from almost every single foster home he's been in. For a while he was almost exclusively living on the street until he was busted for tagging a building alongside a few others when he was 11. That's when he was sent to a more strict family. Strict, Tatsumoto nodded. The Jones family in Saitama were known for turning problem children like him into success stories. The state believed they would be the best answer to his problems. He burned their house down 8 months after they took him in. That deviates from every other charge he's ever had. Aizawa started. Why would he suddenly turn to arson? And why against that specific family? We didn't find out ourselves until the end of that year when he took a tumble down a flight of stairs. Tatsumoto grunted. The medical staff that we have here found scars, whip marks from belts and switches, brands seared into his back. It took the doctor about 2 hours to get the story from him. Apparently the Joneses were devout Christians, and saw his quirk and resulting attitude as a sign that the devil was in him, and acted accordingly. They're lucky the kid didn't just burn down the house with them in it. What about the last foster home? It says there was an incident that landed him here once more and landed his foster parent in Tartarus. Yes, I was actually sad to hear this report. He grimaced. Soron. He became a foster about 4 years ago, and had several smaller children under his care before the kid went to him 3 years ago. We didn't hear anything about him for the entirety of those 3 years until about a month ago. Turns out Soron is the notorious dragon of the West. Of the Caldera Syndicate, Aizawa asked in surprise. How did that get past the background check? It seems the man never used his real name in any of his illegal dealings. Hell, he was the only one in that group that was never arrested until now. Cops found out from an anonymous tip and raided the house. Did he try to fight his way out? Is that why? No, that's not why he's back, Tatsumoto said abruptly. Soron surrendered peacefully. Didn't even raise his voice to the officers. The kid tried to fight back until Soron told him not to. The authorities only arrested the kid because he had activated his quirk, but they're just waiting on the judge to sign some paperwork to release him from here. Aizawa huffed. He was resisting cops just a month ago. Broken bar. Is there something different this time around? From what I'm hearing, it doesn't seem like he would be UA material. You don't mince words, do you? Tatsumoto asked dryly. You know, I was once a regular in these walls, and now here I am, a retired hero and administrator. He stood and walked around the desk, sitting on side of it as he stared out the window towards the juveniles in the rec yard playing basketball. This time around I can tell the boy is different. He's no longer looking for and trying to start fights. He has been much more courteous to his peers and has taken to focusing on academics. His anger issues and violent tendencies have been curbed for the most part. Aizawa quirked an eyebrow. What do you think prompted this turnaround? In my honest opinion, I believe it was Soron himself who helped him turn a new leaf. Their quirks are similar, very similar, and Soron may have used this to connect with him and train him. Do you think Soron was trying to conscript him? Tatsumoto actually laughed at this. The Caldera Syndicate has been inactive for over a decade. He chuckled, and evidence shows that it was Soron himself who helped turn the lights off on it. The man was, for lack of a better word, retired. No, I believe that Soron saw this boy, and wanted to stop him from continuing down the same path he did. You seem to have an awful lot of respect for a retired supervillain. Tatsumoto shrugged. I have talked with him before, when checking in on his ward a few times. He leans back, crossing his arm. Is there any questions you would like to ask? His quirk, Aizawa began, leaning forward. It's labeled as fire manipulation. Could you shed some more light on it? Tatsumoto nodded, looking at Aizawa. Fire manipulation, or firebending as he has taken to calling it. He can produce flames from his hands, feet and mouth, and can control fire around him to an extent. His control varied for most of his time here, though this last stay has shown he has increased his control over it. How much is increased? Aizawa asked. During a class on quirk usage he was able to produce flames that were almost cold to the touch. He chuckled. Never thought I would feel a room temperature fire. Broken bar. He stood up fully, staring at Aizawa. Would you like to meet him? Aizawa sighed and stood up. Yes, if it's possible. Tatsumoto smiled and stood. Follow me. He is currently in a segregated block due to the fight he had participated in, Tatsumoto explained as they walked into the block in question. 8 rooms line the walls, all of them heavy metal with meal slots built into them. He is being pulled off restrictions tomorrow, though he has requested to stay in his seg cell. Apparently it helps him focus. Aizawa nodded as they stopped by a door labeled with a large black 4. Tatsumoto unlocked the door. Midoriya, Tatsumoto greeted as he opened the door. You have a visitor. Aizawa stepped into the doorway, his eyes scanning the Spartan room, from the made-up bed to the simply wooden desk where the boy in question was sitting. Dressed in the same jumpsuit as everyone else, the boy had the top zipped down and tied around his waist. A simple white shirt hid several different scars that trailed up into the sleeve. He was a healthy skinny, with lean defined muscles and long curly green hair. The boy looked up at Aizawa, then looked down. Aizawa noted the papers on the desk and the pen in his hand. "Hello," Aizawa began. "I'm Shouta Aizawa. I'm a teacher at UA." "Hello, sir," Midoriya greeted quietly, keeping his eyes averted. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Broken Bar." Aizawa looked at Tatsumoto, who motions to the bed. With a sigh, Aizawa steps in fully. "May I?" he asks the boy, who looks up slightly before looking back down. "Go ahead," he muttered. Aizawa sits down and leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I was sent here to speak with you about possible enrollment to UA." Aizawa begins as he watches Izuku begin to tap his pin against the table, leg bouncing as the boy kept looking from Aizawa back down to the floor. "You did put an application in, didn't you?" "Why, yes, sir," Izuku mumbled, forcing himself to look up at Aizawa. I want to be a hero, to turn my life around and help others like me." "I see. And why should we give you a chance? Your criminal history alone would exempt you from most hero schools, not to mention the notes on your anger management problems." Izuku chuckled humorlessly. "These last 4 years have taken a lot of my anger out of me." A Broken Bar, he mumbles, looking down at his calloused hands. "I'm not the delinquent who skips school to look for fights. Truthfully, I want to avoid them at all cost. But what's the point of having my quirk if I can't help others?" Aizawa nods slightly. "What can you tell me about your time with Iosaron?" he asks. Immediately Izuku perked up. "You mean Uncle Io?" "That's what he told everyone to call him," he said with a sincere smile and a warm light in his eyes as he reminisces of the past. "All honesty, my stay with him was the best time of my life. He was like an eccentric uncle, giving everyone who stopped by his tea shop wisdom and advice. He was able to teach me how to properly use my firebending. It's what we call our quirks," he explained quickly. "At least that's the name of the fighting style. He used it to teach me how to control my temper and fire. He's the reason I want to be a hero." Broken Bar. Aizawa slowly stood up, making Izuku flinch slightly. "Thank you for your time, Midoriya," Aizawa said. "Thank you for speaking with me, Mr. Aizawa," Izuku said, giving a small bow. Aizawa turned and walked out of the cell. Tatsumoto gave Izuku an encouraging nod as he closed the door and locked it. "What do you think?" he asked as he caught up with Aizawa. Aizawa didn't say anything until they stepped out of the block. "Do you have a room where I can make a quick phone call?" he asks. Tatsumoto grinned. "You can use my office." A few hours later, Izuku was in a daze as he walked out of the JDC, an old yellow backpack hanging off one shoulder and a duffel bag in his hand, now dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans as he followed Aizawa into the lobby. "Good luck, Midoriya," one of the officers called out to him from the door, several others joining him. "Show them what you can do. Don't let them psych you out. Can't wait to see your debut, kid. You definitely have a lot of people rooting for you, young Midoriya." Tatsumoto chuckled as he followed the boy and Aizawa to the waiting car. "I hope to see you going far." "Thank you, Captain Tatsumoto," Izuku stuttered, giving him a small bow as Tatsumoto laughs. "Take care of yourself, kid," Tatsumoto said, giving Aizawa a respectful nod before walking back into the building. "Let's get going," Aizawa said, stepping into the driver's side while Izuku quickly got into the passenger side. "Thanks to Principal Nezu, your release paperwork was pushed through," Aizawa began as he started the car and began driving. "Understand that this chance he is extending to you is a one-time thing. If you mess it up, you won't be getting another one." "Why, yes, sir," Izuku said. "You'll be staying at an apartment that is contracted through you for students who are from out of town and need a place to stay. You'll have your own apartment so long as housing doesn't require you to have a roommate. This is where you'll be staying until the U entrance exam, rent and utility free, and, depending on the student's needs, grants a small stipend for groceries. If you pass, then you will continue to stay there. If not, you'll be re-entered into the foster system." "Yes, sir," Izuku mumbled as he looked down. "You're free to come and go as you please," Aizawa continued on, "but be mindful that this complex is home to no less than 5 heroes, including me. If there's any indication that you're running amok in the streets, then you'll be kicked out and your chance of going to UL will be over. I promise I won't throw this chance away." "Thank you, Mr. Aizawa," Aizawa grunted as he pulls into a small, gated, apartment complex, 3 buildings in all surrounding a small park with a pool. He scans an ID card to open the gate and continues in. "Follow me," he says, stepping out of the car and heading towards the center building, Izuku quickly following. They climb up to the 3rd floor and stops at the 5th apartment, apartment 34C, he says, handing Izuku a keycard. That keycard opens your door, and the gate. Do not lose it. Why yes sir, Izuku says as he unlocks the door and steps in, looking over the medium-sized, sparsely furnished apartment, his hands running over the linoleum counter as he steps down a hallway just across from the front door. I'll leave you to it, Aizawa says, stepping out of the apartment and closing the door behind him. Izuku barely notices Aizawa leaving as he opened one of the 4 doors in the hallway, coming into what was probably the main bedroom, with a simple full-sized bed and generic sheets and comforter, and a wooden desk not unlike the one he had at the JDC. A room all to myself with no one around to search it randomly. A broken bar, Izuku mumbles as he sits down on the bed. This is heaven, a broken bar. A month The next day, Aizawa slowly walked towards his apartment, forcing himself to keep his eyes open as he sluggishly searched his pocket for his keycard, mentally chewing out Midoriya for causing so much paperwork as well as the meeting he had to attend that morning. If and when he passes, his guardianship will be transferred to his homeroom teacher, Nezu stated to Aizawa as well as the other teachers in the room. Though I have my doubts he will fail. If he does, then he will be placed back in foster care. Is everyone understanding? Aizawa sighed as he opened his door, stopping himself from walking in as he caught movement out of the corner of his eye. He looked over and grunts as he sees Midoriya running on the concrete sidewalk that circled the apartment, slick with sweat and struggling to keep his breath even. He looked like he had been hard at work for a while. At least he's taking the preparation seriously. A broken bar, Aizawa muttered as he stepped into his apartment, closing the door without a look back. A month later, Izuku controlled his breathing as he went through his katas, keeping all of his muscles tensed as he moved from one form to another as he thought about the last month of his life. In all honesty, it was strange to have as much freedom as he did. Most of his foster homes had enforced a strict curfew and punished anyone who broke it harshly, but here he was free to stay out as late as he wanted, with only a tired glare from Aizawa to make him think about coming home earlier. It usually worked. It was also unnerving how many heroes were in this area. Even in Io's shop, they were situated in a less than nice neighborhood and only saw a hero if a chase moved there, but here, with 5 heroes living in the apartments and several more stopping by to visit, he was hard-pressed to find a day where there were no heroes around. Not that he wanted the heroes out of the area, it just made him nervous that they would harass him, which, thankfully, they didn't. He was also surprised at the attention that Aizawa gave him. For the first 2 weeks the man was standoffish and seemed to hate him, though he did give him some tips to help regulate his breathing when running. About 2 weeks back he had gone from watching him from the walkway of the 2nd floor, to watching him from a nearby bench, giving comments and tips on his forms or asking what he was writing in his journal in between workouts. By now Izuku was more or less used to Aizawa's presence. "You're stiff." Izuku jumped and whirled around, standing in a defensive stance as he stared at Aizawa, who was standing in a tank top and shorts, arms crossed. "You need to loosen up. If you're stiff it'll make your movements jerky and easily readable." Right, a broken bar, Izuku muttered as he relaxed. "Do you have to sneak up on me?" "I don't. You just don't pay attention," Aizawa says, looking at the sun slowly slipping down towards the horizon. "I heard you were volunteering at a beach cleanup." Oh, yeah. I was walking by it and saw just how much trash was on it, so I started cleaning up what I could. I guess word got around and more people began showing up. I take it you're not going out there today?" "Oh no, today I need to focus on my katas," Izuku said sheepishly, scratching the back of his head. "It can't just be strength training." "You're right, a broken bar," Aizawa agreed, looking back at the boy. "What are those forms you're using?" "My forms? Oh, it's the fighting style that Uncle made up," Izuku said with a grin. "He always told me that it's the fire inside that makes my temper so volatile, and taught me these forms to help relax my mind. Meditating also helps. But these katas also help me fight with my fire." "It does, huh? Would you like to spar?" Are you sure, TT, that's a good idea?" Izuku asks worriedly as he looks around the apartment complex. "It'll be fine, neither of us will use our quirks," he says, getting into a fighting stance. "Okay, a broken bar," Izuku says, getting into a defensive stance, reactively dodging Aizawa's opening jabs and blocking a roundhouse. he throws a few punches of his own, putting Aizawa on the defensive. It ends when Aizawa gets a hard jab in on Izuku's side, making the boy drop his guard and leaving him open to another kick from Aizawa that sends him sprawling. You need to use a little aggression in your fighting style, Aizawa said. Passively waiting to counter attacks leaves too many openings. Go on the offense. Alright, let's go again. WWW. 40 minutes later, Izuku was gasping for breath as he once again landed on his back. But unlike the first time where he simply lay down, he used his arms and shoulders to regain his feet and pressed another attack at Aizawa, this time with an axle kick that was followed up with a few roundhouses. Aizawa barely flinched as he tanked the attacks and grabbed Izuku's leg, flipping him over his back and slamming him into the grass. Better. You're actually pressing attacks and taking what advantages you can, but you're throwing caution to the wind and not planning out your attacks. You need to keep a level head in a fight. Yes sir, Izuku sighed as he sat up. Aizawa looked to the horizon, noting how far the sun had dipped. Let's call it a day, he says, holding a hand out to Izuku, who gratefully takes the hand and stands up. You hungry? Yeah, Izuku said cautiously, feeling confusion when Aizawa began walking away. There's a ramen stand not too far from here that's pretty good. Let's go. Izuku blinked, then smiled. Yeah, sure, he says, running to catch up with Aizawa. The two walked in a companionable silence until they got closer to the ramen stand. You keep training like this and you'll be ready for the entrance exam, Aizawa said quietly. Keep up the good work. Yes sir, Izuku says with a determined expression, giving the man a wider smile. Thank you for your help. Aizawa puts his hands into his pockets, staring straight ahead. Don't mention it, kid. Aizawa yawned as he stepped into the teacher's lounge at UA, looking at a few reports that had been given to him by Nezu. Most had to do with potential students who would be coming to take the entrance exam and had a good shot to actually get into the hero course. Hey Raja, President Mick greeted loudly as Aizawa walked towards the table. What you looking at Udi? Potential student files, Aizawa says, looking at some of the more promising of the crop, including the Midoriya kid. President Mick asked with a shit-eating grin as Aizawa glared at him. I hear he's got a good shot. Same shot as everyone else, Aizawa muttered as he took a seat, his mind going back to the last 7 months since Izuku Midoriya had been given his second chance. The boy had become a well-known figure around the apartments, with few finding a reason to hold a grudge against the boy. Most give him a wave of greeting when they see the boy doing his workouts. It was also a common sight to see Aizawa accompanying him, training the boy where he could. You can't tell me you're not pulling for the boy to make it to your class. I'm not allowed to show bias, Aizawa muttered. Whatever you say, President Mick said with a carefree shrug as Midnight walked in. What are we talking about, boys? She asked as she lounged back into her chair. Nothing, Aizawa said just as Mick said, his son. Oh yes, little Midoriya, Midnight gushed. I've heard good things about your boy Zawa. He's not my boy, Aizawa grumbled. You talk about him like he's yours. Mick snickered, always gushing how well his training is going and how you just wish he would take some time to relax and how he's overworking himself. Mick stopped when Aizawa flashed his quirk, intimidating the loud voice user while Midnight began to giggle. What did Miss Joke say when she found out she's a mum? Midnight asked, eyes twinkling mischievously. I'm not going out with her, and he's not my son, Aizawa growled. I seemed to remember a drunken call at 2 in the morning informing me that you were taking a certain someone home too. I will tie you up and lock you in your office, Aizawa snapped tiredly. Oh, you're kinky today. Before Aizawa could say anything, the other teachers showed up, forcing him to keep his mouth clamped shut as Nezu stepped in with a skeleton-looking man with long hair. Good evening everyone, let's get this meeting started, Nezu said cheerfully as he jumped onto the table. Our first order of business, we have a new staff member joining us this semester as the new Hero Foundation teacher, as our previous teacher Whiplash will be retiring. He's easy on the eyes, Midnight said while licking her lips, staring pervertedly at the skeleton man, who looked slightly uncomfortable at her attention. Yes, his name is Toshinori Yagi, or as all of you know him as, All Might. It was quiet for 3 beats before chaos rang out. All Might? He's way too skinny to be him. There's no way. This makes him even more desirable. Toshinori coughed up blood at Midnight's exclamation, before swelling to his hero form. Thank you for the reception. All Might laughed, before shrinking back down to his other form. Any questions you may have about this form is covered in the packets that were delivered to your offices. For now just accept the fact that he is on our staff. I hope we'll be working very close together, Toshi, Midnight said in a sultry tone, licking her lips. I hope so too. A broken bar Toshina, I gulped. Now, on to this year's entrance exam. Nezu says, this year we have a special case in the applicant pool. I am of course talking about Izuku Midoriya. He's the first applicant with a criminal record that you've allowed to actually take the entrance exam. Cementos says, why didn't you reject his applicant like the others? Normally I would have, but looking into the boy's history and talking with my old friend Tatsumoto, I decided to make an exception this year. The last time UA allowed an applicant with a criminal history to take the entrance exam, they went villain and attacked the other applicants. Snipes grunted, what if this kid does the same? The boy shows no villainous tendencies, though I agree we cannot be too careful, so the Hero Association is willing to have 2 heroes on standby just in case he tries to turn villain. He won't, Aizawa said coldly, making everyone look at him in shock, with Midnight and Present Mick looking nervous. I've spent a good deal of time with Midoriya this summer, I guarantee we have nothing to worry about. I agree with Erasure, Midnight said, with Present Mick nodding along. How can we possibly give this boy a second chance if we're doubting him before he even takes the entrance exam? We will have to take a vote on the matter. Nezu says, all those in favor taking the precaution and having 2 pro heroes on standby at his testing center raise your hand. Cementos, Snipes, Vlad King, 13, Ectoplasm and Lunch Rush raise their hands. All opposed? Aizawa, Midnight, Present Mick and All Might raise their hands. Sadly, it carries. Nezu says, Pro Heroes Manual and Miss Joke will be on standby. Aizawa huffed and leaned back. Now, on to the next subject, the sports festival. Aizawa stepped out of his car, eyes scanning the small park in the middle of the apartments until they fell on the form of Izuku Midoriya, sitting cross-legged with his hands in his lap, one laying atop the other. Around him were the neighborhood kids, who were balancing whatever they could find on the still boy, giggling quietly as they placed more and more outrageous things atop him, finishing with a bucket full of water on his head as Aizawa walked up, quickly scampering a safe distance away as Aizawa glanced towards them with a small smile. Midoriya, Aizawa called loudly, making the boy jump then give a small scream as things began crashing around him, water soaking him as the bucket tipped over. Really guys, again? Izuku groaned as he gave a half-hearted glare to the laughing children. Your fault for not paying attention, Aizawa drawled as he sat on his usual bench. I thought you were meditating in your room since the last time they pulled this. Yeah, but it was such a nice day. A broken bar, he sighed, then looked at Aizawa. You look tired. Aren't I always? He asked, leaning forward. Principal Nezu had a meeting today, concerning you. Is he retracting his offer? Izuku asked anxiously. Aizawa shook his head. It's been decided that there will be 2 pro heroes watching the battle center you will be testing in. Izuku deflated a little. Are they really that worried I'll do something? Apparently. I am sorry that the vote passed. If I had a say in it, then it wouldn't be happening. It's fine, Izuku said, looking at his mentor. I'll show them that I'm serious about being a hero. Aizawa smiled. I know you will, kid. Now come on. We still have some light out. Let's get some training in. Yes sir. A few weeks later, Izuku stared at UA, a strong feeling of accomplishment welling up inside him. I made it, Broken Bar, he said softly, putting his hands into the pockets of his sweater. I'm here, Broken Bar. He took a deep breath and took his first steps towards UA, only to immediately trip on an out-of-place brick. Shit, he exclaimed as he did his best to keep his footing, stumbling a few steps before expertly regaining his footing and continuing on. Oh geez, that was a close one. He let out a relieved sigh as he walked completely unknowing of the girl behind him with her hand raised and a surprised look on her face. It didn't take him long to reach the auditorium he had been assigned. He put his hood up as he walked, trying his best to keep a low profile as he found his seat next to a spiky-haired blonde, who was currently glaring at the stage with his arms crossed, muttering something under his breath. Shitty little ... not showing ... son of a bitch. A Broken Bar. The quiet grumblings made Izuku sink into his seat a little further, hoping the guy wouldn't turn his irate mutterings towards him. A few moments later the lights turned on over the stage, revealing Present Mick. No way, Izuku said in awe. Good evening and welcome listeners to UA. Can I get a yeah? Yeah, Izuku shouted, raising his fists, unrealizing in his excitement that he was the only one to do so. Oh, we have a player here, huh? Well then, can I get a hey? Hey, Izuku cheered again, This time a blonde kid with a black streak in his hair joined in alongside him. Well, this is a receptive audience. Now let's get on with the explanation of what you'll all be doing after the written exam, which will be a 10-minute practical exam. You cool cats will be conducting 10-minute mock battles in one of our many battle centers. You will be facing OFF against robots to earn points. Points will be awarded for the type of robo-villain you defeat. There's 3 of them, and the numbers on them are the amount of points they're worth. Excuse me. Another light came on, illuminating a severe-looking student who was glaring ahead at attention. You say there are only 3 villain types when the handbook given to us clearly states there's 4. If this is a mistake on the school's part, it is disgraceful and shows poorly on the celebrated name of UA. He then turned and pointed at Izuku, and you stopped that muttering. If you're not going to take this seriously, then leave. Excuse me? Izuku demanded. Any embarrassment or shyness that he exhibited at being called out disappeared. Who the hell do you think you are calling me out like that? I got just as much right to be here as you do, and yet you continue to disgrace us with your indecent and poor attitude. Come on up here and I'll show you an indecent and poor attitude. Izuku snapped angrily. Whoa, calm down, President Mick called. Despite trying his best, he was grinning and barely containing his laughter. Examinees number 7111 and 8256, please cool your jets. Any physical fighting will result in both of you being removed from the applicant pool. Izuku clenched his jaw as he sat down. Sorry, sir, he called out, leaning back as the blonde at his side chuckles. You're a spunky little extra, aren't ya? He asked as the question 7111 had asked was being answered. Izuku grunted, barely paying attention to the boy as they were all dismissed to the written exams. A few hours later, Izuku stood just outside the gates of his battle center, barely paying attention to the world around him as he tied his sweater around his waist, leaving him in sweats and a black tank top. Hey! The cheerful exclamation shook Izuku out of his thoughts as he flinched and brought his arms up as he whirled around, ready for a fight. Whoa, friendly. The girl behind him squeaked out, holding her arms up in a placating manner. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. Izuku took a calming breath and relaxed. It's alright, no harm, he said, laughing nervously. I'm sorry, but I don't think I know you. Oh, where are my manners? She extended her hand, smiling happily. Akuko Uraraka, at your service. Izuku hesitantly shook her hand. Izuku Midoriya, he says. It's a pleasure to meet you. I saw you outside when we were walking in. You tripped and I was going to use my quirk to stop you from falling because it's not good karma to fall before a big day, and of course it's rude to use a quirk on someone without their permission, but I assumed you'd be fine with not falling, but then you caught yourself. And I was so surprised, and I'm broken bar. She trailed off as she stared at Izuku, his face a burning red in embarrassment at finding out someone saw him almost take a tumble. I'm guessing I didn't need to add that part, huh? She asked sheepishly, blushing. And not really, he stuttered, but thank you either way. Uraraka gave a relieved chuckle as Izuku scratched the back of his head. His eyes went slightly past her to where a familiar student was stalking towards them, arm moving robotically as he walked, only to stop at the glare Izuku gave him. Go. Everyone looked up in surprise at President Mick's exclamation. There's no warning in life, kids. Now go. Without a second thought, Izuku suddenly propelled himself forward with his fire, sparing only a small glance back to make sure he didn't burn anyone as he flew across the city, cutting the fire off as he reached the far edge of the city, falling towards a grouping of several foe villains. As he landed in a roll, the voice of Io seemed to echo in his mind as he popped up into a basic defensive position. Remember the basics, Izuku. The more advanced cards are powerful, but it is not the mighty towers or weapons that keep the castle from falling, but its strong base. Simple and precise fireballs from his fists and legs quickly reduces the 7 1-pointers into slag after each attack. Izuku returned to his defensive stance. Despite how fast he was delivering the attacks, he quickly moves on to another grouping of 4 1s and 2 3. He spends the beginning dodging their attacks and lets out a pain grunt as a punch from one sends him flying, leaving him sprawled on his back as anger courses through him. Your fire is easily fueled by anger and aggression, but this makes you sloppy and prone to mistakes. Controlling your breathing will help keep a level mind and inner peace to effectively use your fire. Izuku lets out a puff of fire from his mouth before jumping up and attacking the group once more, letting his fire loose as he darts between them, moving from one group to the next until he stops at the end of the street, covered in sweat as he looks back at the destruction he had wrought. Over 20 bots were now practically molten puddles on the ground. That's about 30 points of broken bar. He breaths out as he leans against a building looking towards the main street, a few other bots in his way. With a grunt, Izuku shoots off again, destroying 4 more 3-pointers with spinning kicks along the way. As he bursts into the main street, he destroys another 3-pointer with his fire breath before he pivots and punches, sending a steady stream of fire at a 2-pointer that had come after him from one of the side streets, its internally wiring melting as it comes to a slow stop in front of him. Izuku lets out a breath as he slowly turns around, his eyes widening as he sees a boy with purple hair get hit back by a 3rd-pointer. He shoots off and catches the boy before he could hit the concrete. "You good?" Izuku asks him. "Why, yeah." The boy stutters out, glaring at the 3-pointer as it charges them. "Can you take it?" Izuku asks as he jumps back, narrowly dodging a sloppy swipe by the vehicle. I don't think so, broken bar," the boy says, and without hesitation, Izuku attacks, his foot slamming into the bot's neck and unleashing golden flames into its head, making it fall over. "Thanks," the boy says bitterly. "Try going for their joints," Izuku says to him, making the boy look at him in surprise. "Doesn't take much to fuck up their internal wiring. Clean kick to the joint should at least immobilize it for a follow-up." I didn't know that," the boy said. "How do you?" "Kicks with no fire. We're taking these things out on the joints. You just gotta be in shape," he said, giving the boy a grin. "Now get after it." With that, Izuku blasted off again, crashing into similar situations as he went. He gave a helping hand where he could, running distractions on the bots to give a boy with weird balls on his head the chance to stick the bots down, or giving what appeared to be an invisible girl the chance to jump on the robot's back. "There's more bots deeper into the city. Don't just stay on this street," Izuku called. Uraraka looked back at him and smiled. "Thanks for the advice," she thought as she darted down a side street, running into more bots. Within 2 minutes they were all scrap. That's 30. A few moments before, viewing room. "Well, this is a very promising batch, isn't it?" Nezu asks Toshinori as he looks at the different monitors. "You can say that again," Toshinori says, watching as Bakugo eagerly attacks the robots. "Some students will attempt to use their combat skills to gain as many points as they can," Nezu said conversationally as he looks from Bakugo's screen to one currently tracking Ida, "while others use coolness under pressure to keep up. And others use both," Toshinori commented, watching as Izuku Midoriya tear through the bots. Then narrowed his eyes as he watched the boy help out a few others. "Are they allowed to help each other?" It's not against the rules, and we do have rescue points to account, but I don't think advice and orders count. A broken bar, Nezu hums as he watches Midoriya help a concussed applicant to his feet and off to a side street where there were less bots, but his concern over the other applicants is worth noting. "You're right, he's definitely trying to help everyone he can," Toshinori nodded. Izuku Midoriya. "I ran into him when he was helping a non-profit clean up Mustafu Municipal Beach. They allowed him to sparingly use his quirk to cut apart larger trash so it'd be easier to haul off. He's a good kid with a criminal record." A member of the school board scoffed. "Give it time and he'll start attacking the other applicants when he realizes he doesn't have enough points. I think he's got enough points as is." Midnight laughs. "He's destroyed over 34 bots, bringing in a current score of 50. Not as high as others, but definitely within the top 5% of scorers." Nezu agreed. "Let's see how they react to the gimmick." Izuku stopped his attack on a 1-pointer as the ground began to shake. He looked up alongside everyone else as the gigantic 0-pointer appeared. "Jesus fuck, everyone get out of here," he shouted, directing a few slower applicants away as they all ran. "That's supposed to be a small obstacle?" he grumbled as he scanned the street, making sure everyone was out before he took off running. "Ow, help, someone." Izuku skids to a stop as he turns around once more, eyes zeroing in on a girl stuck in the rubble. Another girl passed out a few feet from her. "God damn it." Izuku groaned as he ran towards her, passing by a confused Ida, who stops to watch him run, his eyes widening when he sees the girl stuck in rubble. Izuku gets to her side in a few seconds, sliding to a stop beside her as he grabs the rubble, pinning her. "Uraraka, are you hurt anywhere else?" Izuku asks as he strains to push the rubble. "No, but I think my ankle is broken, and I'm at my limit." She struggled out, looking on the verge of throwing up. She was hit by rubble. I was trying to help her. Just relax. I'll get you both out of here. Izuku reassured her as he pushed, straining until Ida suddenly slid to his side, pushing the same piece of rubble until it finally lifted up enough for Uraraka to pull her leg out. Let's go, Ida said as he picked up Uraraka and the other girl and began running, Izuku on his tail looking back as their zero-pointer locked onto them. We won't get to safety in time, Izuku called. We will if we keep running, Ida shouted back. Izuku slowed down as once again Io's voice echoed through his mind. This next form I show you not because I think you will be able to do it now, but because I know one day you will be able to. Keep running, Izuku commanded Ida as he planted his foot and pivoted around, beginning to move his hands through wide arcs. 2 fingers extended. Are you crazy? Ida cried. Just keep going. Izuku snapped as blue arcs of electricity began to spark at his fingers. To summon lightning is the highest achievement firebenders like us can achieve. It is the purest form of fire and requires the utmost control and precision. Izuku felt the power begin to swell inside of him. A white-hot burning sensation ran through his stomach, into his chest and down into his arms, threatening to overwhelm him as he neared the end of the kata. To use the lightning your mind must be clear and your soul at peace. I believe you will one day reach this state, and it may very well happen when you save the lives of innocents. Izuku lets out a guttural scream as he jabs his 2 fingers out. Thunder roared as blue tendrils of lightning shot from his fingertips, slamming into the zero-pointer and traveling through its circuitry before exiting out the area in blue light for a few moments until the last of the lightning left Izuku. Slowly the zero-pointer collapses back, crashing through several buildings as it comes to a groaning stop. Izuku grins as his knees start to give out. The timer sounds, indicating the end of the test. Didn't think it would work. A broken bar, he mumbled as he fell forward in a dead faint. Midoriya, Uraraka cried out as Ida set her and the other girl down. I'll go check on him, Ida reassured her as he ran back to Izuku's side. Are you okay? Ida asked as he checked the boy over for injuries, only to find scrapes and scratches from the other robots. He's barely injured. So why is he unconscious? Must have overused his quirk, an aged voice said, making Ida turn around as Recovery Girl walked towards them. Poor dear, but that's what happens when you do something you're not ready for. She tapped something on her phone, making 2 medical bots roll forward with a stretcher. Now, while they're getting him settled, is anyone else injured? As she moved on to help Uraraka, Ida looked at Izuku once again. All that power, that conviction. He selflessly threw himself into saving her and I hesitated. He truly must be a better student than I. In the viewing room, the teachers and various judges were going crazy. Nezu was cheering alongside All Might, who could not believe the display of power he had just witnessed. Aizawa frowned as he watched the boss take Izuku to Recovery Girl's office. Reckless problem child, he sighed, already thinking of the scolding he'd be giving Izuku on his non-existent self-preservation skills. And in the back, dressed in white and blue furs with a pair of skiers goggles hanging from his neck, Pakuagna, otherwise known as Pro Hero Whiplash, narrowed his eyes at the boy who reminded him of a certain villain. Izuku sat in his living room, staring with dead eyes at his TV. He had been in a similar state for the last month since the entrance exam, going through his days in a zombie daze that unnerved most who passed him. Only a few of the heroes living at the apartment knew why he was the way he was. The aftermath of Izuku destroying the zero-pointer had Izuku waking up in Recovery Girl's office, with Recovery Girl simply ushering him off to get rest. Izuku wasn't able to find out much else on his chances, only that the results would be coming in the mail. What if I failed? How long would it take them to come and kick me out? Would Aizawa try and help me? Would he be the one to kick me out? What if they want to get me in trouble for destroying the zero-pointer? Izuku groaned as he let his head fall into his hands. I haven't even heard from Aizawa in the last month. What if he just doesn't want to break the bad news to me? He sighed as he slowly stood up and headed for the kitchen, intent on making himself a cup of instant ramen. The mail slot opening and closing stopped him. Ever so slowly he looked towards the front door and the letter that had just been pushed through. With a slight whimper he saw the UA symbol and picked the letter up. It's my results. A broken bar, he muttered, slowly going back to the couch and sitting down. Okay. Just like a band-aid, he muttered before ripping the letter open, dropping a metallic disc onto the coffee table. It soon sparked to life, displaying a holographic projection of I am here as a projection. Izuku jumped back at the exclamation. No way, All Might, he said in awe. Yes, it is I, All Might, here to tell you your score for the entrance exam. WHYUASK, because starting this semester I will be a teacher at UA. Izuku gaped at the hologram, Or my A teacher. Now where was I? Yes. Izuku Midoriya, you scored 52 hero points, which is more than enough to pass. But that wasn't good enough for a go-getter like you, eh? See, another part of the exam that is kept under wraps is the inclusion of rescue points. Points awarded for displaying heroic acts during the exam. And you did quite the heroic thing. The holograph changed to a video clip of him and Ida helping Uraraka and the other girl as well as Izuku destroying the zero-pointer on his own to give them time to escape. Izuku Midoriya, 64 rescue points. Tenuita, 15 rescue points. Akuko Uraraka, 35 rescue points. Not only did you pass the exam, you shattered my OWN score of 113. Izuku let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Welcome, young Midoriya, to your Hero Academia. Izuku quickly wiped away a few tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. I did it. He whispered. I did it. He said louder, slowly standing up and walking to the window, then turning around and letting out a loud cheer. I did it. He whooped, running around his apartment like a crazy person. I can't believe I did it. Oh sweet Agni, thank you. Woo. He cheered and bounced around until he was too tired to continue, breathing heavily as he flopped back down on the couch, pulling out his phone as a notification rang out. A message. He mumbled as he opened his phone. Aizawa, come to the ramen stand. Izuku quickly jumped up and ran out of the apartment, taking the steps 3 at a time before taking off at a fast jog. Soon he was at the ramen stand, where Aizawa was sitting, 2 bowls of ramen already waiting. I already ordered, so go ahead and eat, Aizawa said as he slurped some noodles up. Yes sir, thank you, he said, taking a seat and digging into the ramen. I'm sorry I haven't been around, Aizawa says as he takes a sip of his drink. I've been bogged down by all the paperwork from the entrance exam. It's even cut into my patrol times ... but congratulations on passing the exam. Thanks, Izuku responded around a mouthful of noodles before swallowing. I couldn't have done it without your help. HMPH, I doubt that kid. You're one of those who just doesn't know when to quit. He turned back to his noodles as Izuku grinned. Kind of a backhanded compliment, but he'll take it, he thought as he continued to eat. Both were quiet as they finished their ramen and began to walk back towards the apartments. I'm sure you already know this, but I'll be your homeroom teacher, Aizawa began as they mounted the steps. Don't think that means things will be smooth sailing. I don't believe in favoritism and will probably be pushing you harder than the others. Izuku stopped in front of his apartment, opening the door. I expect nothing less, he says with a grin as he looks at Aizawa. Don't worry dad, I'll make you proud. And with that Izuku stepped into his apartment and closed the door, leaving Aizawa outside, stunned at what Izuku called him. With a small chuckle Aizawa smiles as he puts his hand on the door. I know you won't, son, a broken bar, he said softly before moving on, hands in his pockets. Inside the apartment Izuku had fallen to his knees in morbid embarrassment. I can't believe I just called him dad, he lamented. He must be so confused. One week later, Izuku yawned as he slowly walked up to the principal's office. Why couldn't we have had this meeting after school? He grumbled to himself as he knocked on the door, putting his hands into his uniform pockets. Come in. Izuku stepped in, looking around the principal's office with curiosity. This isn't anything at all what I thought your office would look like. What did you think my office would look like? If you don't mind me asking, Nezu asked curiously, his kind smile not slipping an inch. Well ... I don't know, maybe pictures of former students ... or more bookcases ... For a second I thought you'd have a hamster wheel in here or something. The gymnasium has a perfectly good track, there's no need for exercise wheels, Nezu said jovially, making Izuku sweat drop. Now, let's discuss the topics I have for you today. The first being the US Sports Festival. As the top scoring student of the entrance exam, you will be expected to give the sportsman's oath at the beginning of the festival. This is not up for discussion, do you understand? Yes sir, Izuku said dutifully, though lamenting the idea of standing up on live television and speaking. Now, another reason I wanted to talk with you is the potential backlash you will be facing while here, he said. Of course we did not divulge your past to anyone not essential, but some of these essential personnel believe your attendance here to be a bad idea. Several Hero Association higher-ups suggested that your criminal record should have been enough grounds to disqualify your scores and keep you from attending, and while I threw their suggestions in the trash where they belong, I cannot stop the general public and even students from attempting to dissuade you from attending here. I want you to know that you have the support of not only myself, but the entire faculty. We want you to realize your goal, Midoriya, and we will never attempt to dissuade you. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity, Izuku said, bowing to the animal. You're quite welcome. Now, why don't you go ahead and head to class? I'm sure you'd like to interact with your fellow students before classes start. Hearing the dismissal, Izuku bowed again and walked out. As the door clicked shut, the bookcase at Nezu's side slowly opened up, revealing Paku, clad in his old hero uniform. You shouldn't let him continue here, Nezu, he says with a sneer of disdain. Everyone deserves a second chance, Paku. He is young, and wishes to be a hero. He was trained by that man, he growled. I doubt his intentions are as noble and pure as you make them out to be. The Dragon of the West was inactive 20 years before we arrested him, and has shown no desire to continue his former work. It is very possible that Midoriya is sincere in his attempts to become a hero. Paku scoffed as he walked to the door. Believe what you want. I for one will be keeping close tabs on the boy. Izuku let out a small sigh of relief as he reached the Class 1A door. Wow, that's a huge door, he mumbled, popping his necks with a grunt. Alright, first day of school with people of you don't know, let's do this. He pushes the door open, immediately flinching back when the open door reveals a shouting match. Get your feet off of that desk. It's disrespectful. Disrespectful to who? Four Eyes? Izuku sighs as he watches the tall boy from the entrance exam berate the blonde-haired boy he had sat next to. I'm already regretting this. It's disrespectful to the upperclassmen who sat in these desks before us. Well, if they get offended by something as small as that, then they're not worth my time, are they? Ida bit his tongue as he straightened up. Look, we got off on the wrong foot. I'm Tenuita. I graduated from private school, huh? What, do you think you're better than me? The blonde-haired boy demanded to know, jutting his chin out. I'll kill ya. Did you just threaten me? Your schoolmate. Izuku slowly steps into the room, intent on just skirting around the two, only for his movement to be caught by both of them. You, Ida says quietly, turning fully to him. Hello, I am Tenuita from Yeah, I heard you when I opened the door. Izuku interrupted with an awkward wave before extending his hand. I'm Izuku Midoriya. It is an honor to meet you, Ida said, shaking his hand robotically. I must admit I misjudged you at the entrance exam. I thought you were just there to disrupt the other test takers, but you showed yourself to be a better student than I, with how you figured out the secret part of the exam. I didn't figure that out at all, Izuku said in confusion, letting go of Ida's hand. I just did what I thought was right, I promise. You're probably a much better student than me. I truly doubt that. So you're the one who stole the #1 spot from me? The blonde-haired boy snapped, cutting Ida off and jumping to his feet. You don't look so tough. Izuku turned his gaze to the boy, eyes narrowing slightly. Looks familiar. I didn't steal anything. Like everyone else, I just did my best to pass the exam. Not my fault you were easy to beat. A tick mark appeared on his forehead. You think you're better than me? I don't think I am, but if the entrance exam is anything to go off of. Izuku trailed off, smirking as the boy turned a deep shade of angry red. Before anything could come of this, the door opened once more. Oh hey, Midoriya. Izuku turned around. Oh, hi Uraraka. I just knew you would pass. She cheered, giving a little hop as she pumped her fist in the air. The blonde-haired boy sat back down in his chair with an angry huff as Uraraka took over the conversation. You were so cool at the exam that there was just no way you'd fail. Thanks. I did my best, he said bashfully, scratching the back of his head. I'm sure. And thank you for saving me. She bowed. I didn't get the chance to say it since I had to leave before you woke up. Oh, don't worry about it, he said, waving her off. Anyone in my position would have done the same. That's where you're wrong, Midoriya, Ida interjected, arm making a chopping motion. The only reason I had turned back to help was because I saw you run to her aid. Had you not, I may have simply continued running. Yeah, and so many people ran past us when I was calling for help. Uraraka pouted. You were the only one who came back. He broken bar Izuku stuttered, at a loss for what to do. Thankfully he noticed a familiar yellow sleeping bag slowly inching towards the door. I think we should talk about this later. The teacher's here. Both Ida and Uraraka turned around and jumped at the yellow sleeping bag. You're all being irrational. Aizawa droned as he forced himself to stand, slurping on an apple juice box. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Wasting time as a hero is irrational. Now take your seats. Instantly everyone was in their seats. Next time I expect all of you to be in your seats and quiet before I enter the room, Aizawa said, stepping out of his sleeping bag, his hand clasping a plastic pack. My name is Shouter Aizawa and I'll be your homeroom teacher. Now, I want all of you to grab one of these uniforms and get changed. Then meet me out on the practice field. He held up the UA-gym uniform before tossing the one in his hand to a boy on the front row. And be quick about it. But sir, what about orientation? Uraraka questioned. We ain't going. It's a waste of time. Aizawa drawled. UA prides itself on breaking tradition and allowing teachers to teach how they want. Hurry up and change. We don't have all day. Quickly everyone went to the locker rooms and changed into the workout clothes, all of them whispering and guessing what they were about to do. Izuku waited until everyone was changed before he changed himself, following after everyone to field, keeping in the back beside Uraraka. Aizawa counted all the students, satisfied when he marked everyone present. Alright, up until now you've all been pretty restricted on quirk usage, mostly being confined to certain days and poor private tutors. Here at UA you'll be allowed to use your quirks whenever physical events take place, which means I need to know where you all are at in terms of quirk usage. To gauge this, you will be running the national fitness test with your quirks. He pulled a softball with a weird metal band on it out of his pocket. Bakugo, Aizawa said, what was your softball throwback in middle school? 75 meters give or take. Bakugo grumbled. Here, he tossed the ball to the boy, do it again. Only this time around use your quirk. Anything goes so long as you don't leave the circle. Bakugo looked at the ball, then to his teacher. Anything goes? He questioned. Just don't leave the circle. Alright, you asked for it. Bakugo stepped into the circle then wound up the pitch, throwing the ball with a powerful explosion behind it and a screaming of the words die. Die? Several in the group questioned as they watched the ball soar. The stat only focuses on how you can do without your quirks to make things fair. He says, I say this line of thinking is stupid and squashes potential. He holds his phone up, showing the distance. 705 meters. They exclaimed. Alright, this is what I'm talking about. A redhead boy cheered. Using our quirks as much as we want. This is going to be fun. The pink-skinned girl shouted, making Izuku flinch. You fools have broken bar, he thought as he broke out into a cold sweat at Aizawa's glare. Fun? He asked coldly. If you're here for fun then you may as well leave now. All of you are here to be heroes, nothing more. Nothing less. He took a step forward. But if it's fun you want, fun, we'll make a little competition out of this. The person who comes in last place today will be expelled. A shocked hush fell over the crowd at the proclamation. But that's not fair. Uraraka cried. We just got here. Fair? Aizawa scoffed. Do you think natural disasters and villain attacks are fair? No. Life isn't fair. As heroes you must understand that and do what you can to mitigate the damage and go beyond plus ultra. Now enough talk. Let's get this show on the road. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. This was better than what he thought was going to happen. I thought we were headed to Hell Week, he thought as they walked to the track for the first event. Midoriya, Bakugo, you two are up for the 50-meter dash. Everyone else line up behind them. The two went to the starting line, most steering clear of being behind Bakugo. You guys may want to get back, Izuku said to the few behind him. Those who had been in his battle center had quickly retreated several steps, while those that hadn't looked confused as they took a few steps back. Izuku sighed. Good enough, he mumbled as he turned back and got into a running position as the boy counted down. 3.2.1, go. Bakugo took off with a powerful explosion, laughing as he went. His laughter stopped when he noticed Izuku keeping pace with him, arms trailing behind him as his fists spewed jet-like fire that propelled him across the finish line. 4.03, 4.04. Bakugo glared at Izuku, who looked to where he had started. The three students who hadn't gotten back far enough were slightly singed. Sorry, he called them. You guys okay? Uraraka asked them worriedly, patting at a small flame that had caught on the tip of the redhead boy's hair. That's a powerful quirk, he said faintly. Yeah, heartbroken by the invisible girl whispered, her face and arms outlined by soot before she shook it off. Enough talk, Aizawa called. Next to, you're up. Throughout the rest of the exercises Izuku used his fire sparingly. In the standing long jump he propelled himself a good 6 feet past the sandpit, getting beaten out by Bakugo and a girl with the frog quirk, and in the distance run he snagged third behind the same girl and Ida, whose engines had smoked everyone. Most of the other tests he couldn't use his fire but still did decently. Finally it was time for the softball throw. Izuku narrowed his eyes at the softball, unaware of the heterochromatic eyes watching him intently. With a deep breath, Izuku wound up the pitch and threw it, a jet of fire propelling the ball into the air, extinguishing as the ball larked into the sky. Without breaking a sweat, Izuku began to throw punches, sending several small fireballs into the air, each one hitting the ball on its way down and boosting it further with small explosions as the compact fire seemed to burst apart, creating mini suns in the sky for a few seconds until the ball hit the ground. 1,400.3 meters. Aizawa droned. Izuku grinned as he walked back to the group, several staring at him in surprise. Bakugo was still glaring at him. "Alright," Aizawa called, gaining everyone's attention as he lazily motions to an electronic board. "Now that we're done, I feel like it'd be too tedious to tell you your scores individually, so here." He pressed a button and the rankings shot up onto the board. "Those of you who ranked lower, recognize where you need to improve and work on it." Izuku nodded as he saw his third place score. "Good," he muttered. "No." Everyone looked over to the short boy with purple balls on his head as he shakily pointed at his last place placement. "Oh, and no one's being expelled." "What?" the entire class except for a few exclaimed. "It was a logical deception," Aizawa said with a creepy smile. "A ruse to make you work harder." Izuku narrowed his eyes as Yaorazu beside him began to tell everyone how she had already figured that out. "No, it wasn't a broken bar," he thought as Aizawa yawned. "Had anyone taken this lightly, you would have expelled them without any hesitance. I guess we all exceeded your expectations." "Alright, class is dismissed. Everyone pick up a syllabus from the classroom before you leave." The class quickly disbanded. Izuku stayed, not wanting to change around everyone else. "You did good today," Aizawa said, walking up to his young ward. "I'll be busy tonight, so don't expect an after-school workout." "Yes sir," Izuku said, giving him a slight bow. Aizawa stared at him for a bit. "Try not to stay out for too long tonight, son," he said, walking away, hands in his pockets. Izuku's eyes widened. Did he just ... He coughed and shook his head. "I'll be home before curfew, Dad. Promise," Izuku called to Aizawa before heading towards the locker room. "HMPH, problem child," Aizawa muttered with a small smile, stopping short as he rounded the corner and found Midnight waiting. "So the adoption went through, huh?" Midnight asked with a laugh. "Should we change the roster to Izuku?" "Aizawa, do it and I kill you in your sleep," Aizawa threatened. Now, I'm not into snuff films." She laughed, flanking him as he continued walking. "But seriously," Midnight continued, arms behind her head, "you two are practically father and son, so why not just make it official? He's already in the custody of UA. Putting unnecessary paperwork through now would take months. By the time it goes through, he'd probably be of age." True, but still, you could do it for the symbolism." Aizawa let out a long-suffering sigh as he glared at one of his oldest friends, eyes squinting slightly. "Is that a hickey on your neck?" "Yep," she said cheerfully. "It better not be from one of the upperclassmen." "Nope," she sang, stopping slightly as they stopped at the teacher's lounge. All Might was walking out in his skeleton form, buttoning up his shirt and showing several love bites on his neck and chest before he fixed his collar and tie. "Good evening, Aizawa," he greeted, his eyes resting on Midnight. "Oh ... Namuri. Hi," he said softly. "Hey Toshi," she winked, making the skeleton grin. "It's good seeing you both, but I need to be going. Running late for a meeting." He gave them a wave goodbye as he walked away. Aizawa turned his gaze to Midnight. "You really can't help yourself, can you?" "Nope." "Oh, Miss Jokin Mount. Lady will be jealous. I truly cannot be more disappointed in you." "Oh come on, you gotta give me props for that." Aizawa silently held his fist up, making Midnight cheer and bumps it with her own. "Is this an actual relationship this time, or are you just getting your kicks in?" Aizawa asked as they continued walking. "According to him, it's too dangerous to have a real relationship, but that's fine for me. That just means we get to have fun." She licked her lips. "He may be a skeleton, but you have no idea just how powerful he still is, especially when he..." "Save the talk for Mick. I really don't care beyond what I asked." Aizawa interrupted. "You're no fun anymore." "I never was. You used to never stop laughing when you were with Emmy. That was her quirk." "Sure, Aizawa." Izuku chatted politely with Ida and Uraraka as they walked, mostly just answering their questions as they reached the station. "I still don't think it was okay for Mr. Aizawa to use such deception against his own students," Ida stated. "Heroes should always be truthful." "Yeah, but he was right. Life isn't fair and this is a good example," Uraraka exclaimed. "What do you think, Midoriya?" "I think we should count ourselves lucky he didn't expel anyone," Midoriya said truthfully. "He's known around school to expel entire classes if they didn't meet his requirements." "Wow, so he must really like us." Uraraka gushed as the train came into the station. "Welp, this is my train." "Mine as well," Ida said, pushing his glasses up. "It was a pleasure talking with you, Midoriya. Have a good rest of the day. Yeah. See ya, Midoriya. Uraraka cheered as they boarded the train. Izuku waved goodbye as the doors slid close and the train left. With a sigh he sat down at one of the benches nearby. So, the annoyed voice of Bakugo said, making Izuku jump and look over to where the boy was leaning against a pillar, glaring at him. You don't remember me, do you? Sorry, I don't seem to recall us ever meeting before today. I a broken bar. Izuku apologized sheepishly. If it makes you feel any better, I barely remember anyone I've met the last decade except for maybe 2 people. Bakugo sneers at this, glaring at the boy. Figures, you really are such a deku. Izuku's eyes widen at the nickname. I haven't heard that name since a broken bar. So you'll be out late tonight? Izuku sighs as he holds the phone to his ear. Yeah, it's important, and I promise I'll head straight home as soon as I'm done. Alright, I believe you. Just make sure you don't get into any trouble and be back before curfew. I won't. Thanks, Dad, Izuku said before hanging up, looking over to Bakugo, who was lounging on 3 seats, arm hanging on the window as he looked out of it. Izuku slowly sat down across from him, resting his elbows on his knees and clasping his hands in front of his mouth, staring down at the ground. Slowly the train pulled into the next station, stopping for a few moments to open the doors and allow anyone to board or leave the train. Neither boy moved as the doors slowly slid closed. Mum did everything to try and find your broken bar, Bakugo said softly, making Izuku look up. She was at the precinct every day pushing the cops for information on you. But since she wasn't family they wouldn't give her much information. You were lost in the system, least that's what they told her. Old lady was depressed when she couldn't find you. He looked at Izuku, didn't understand it for the longest of times. But she said she owed Auntie Inko to take care of you, and she failed. Izuku slowly let his hands fall forward. I am ... having a hard time processing this. Izuku mumbled. Why? You don't think she would try and find you? I didn't think anyone would. He said quietly, making Bakugo raise an eyebrow. When I was in the foster system ... going from shitty home to shitty home ... I dreamed of someone showing up and whisking me away ... some long lost relative or ... or something ... after so long I just figured I wasn't important enough for that fairy tale ending. A broken bar. She tried to cure, Bakugo said softly, sitting up fully as the train slowed once more. She really did a broken bar. With a sigh he stood up as the doors opened. Let's go. Izuku nodded and followed the boy off the train. So who was that you were talking to? Bakugo asked as they made their way down the street. My dad. He said. Well, Mr. Aizawa, he explained upon seeing Bakugo's confusion. He's been my mentor and guardian for the last year, give or take. Huh, weird, Bakugo drawled, shoving his hands into his pockets. Our homeroom teacher is your dad. Think he'd go easy on us because of that? Izuku snorted. Yeah, right. You have no idea how terrified I was when Ashido said what we were doing was fun. He may be a good guy, but Dad really takes hero work and training seriously. Last time I said training was fun, he put me through a hell week. My limbs were so sore that I couldn't walk up the stairs. Harsh. Wonder why he didn't do that today. He scoffed, instead of just trying to scare us with that bullshit expulsion line. Oh no, he was serious, Izuku said, making Bakugo look at him in surprise. Had we not taken the assessment seriously, he would have expelled last place and anyone else he thought wasn't up to snuff. Well ... at least he's not full of hot air. Broken bar. Bakugo sighed, walking up the steps to his house, opening the door and looking back when he realized Izuku wasn't following. The green-haired teen was staring at the house, a mixture of emotions on his face. Come on, he says, we made it this far, don't wimp out. With a steadying breath Izuku stepped forward, following Bakugo into the house. It was as domestic as any other Izuku has been in. Pictures hanging up on the wall, little knickknacks lining shelves. Katsuki, is that you? A woman's voice shouted from the nearby kitchen. Yeah, it's me, Bakugo yelled back. You brat, you're late. She snapped. Can it ya, old hag? I have a surprise for you. He shouted back, grinning as his mother came into the hallway to berate him, only to stop short when she sees Izuku standing behind him, hands in his pockets and giving her an uneasy smile. Hey. Auntie, a broken bar, he mumbled out as she took a small step forward. Izuku? She asks, making the boy nod. Slowly she walks forward, putting a hand on her son's shoulder. As she walks past him, he easily steps back so his mother could see his friend. Carefully she puts her arms around him in a hug, tears streaming down her cheeks as Izuku returns the hug awkwardly. Your mother and I went to UA together, Mitsuki explained quietly as she poured tea for Izuku and Bakugo. They were all currently sitting in the kitchen, sitting around the small table after the emotional reunion. We'd been friends for years before that, and we were going for the hero course. Of course we didn't make it. She sighed as she sat down, picking up her own cup of tea. Your mother was so timid and shy. She just couldn't get the drive to pass the entrance exam, and I passed the exam but got moved to general studies after the sports festival. Apparently my attitude wasn't appreciated by the class, and losing out in the first round didn't help my chances either. She looked up, smiling wistfully as she thought of old memories, but that was fine. We were still close, and we remained close up until she met Hisashi, my father. Izuku mutters, no love in his voice for the man who helped bring him into the world. He was a doting boyfriend, and later on a picture-perfect husband and father. But I could never shake the feeling that there was something off. A broken bar. She shook her head. Your mother refused to listen to me. One of the downsides of falling in love is that you're blind to any faults your partner may have. We got into a big fight our last year, and while we were still friends we weren't as close as we used to be. She looks down into her tea. That changed when you were born. She began to confide in me again, telling me how Hisashi was so obsessed with you gaining a powerful quirk and becoming a hero. He wanted you to fulfill your dream. What father wouldn't? But he didn't want you to achieve it for your own sake. He wanted to ride on the success you could potentially gain, the wealth and prestige. When the doctors said you were quirkless, he was furious. I didn't hear from your mother for a few weeks, and when I finally got a hold of her she was talking about leaving him. She looked up. The night she died was the night she was planning to go. I was supposed to be there, and I tried. But Katsuki was sick and Yabro-konba. She sniffled as she began to cry once more. Izuku stood and moved to her side, giving her an awkward comforting hug. I don't blame you, he whispered. I can't blame you knowing you did what you could to find me. I don't blame you, or my mom. The only person I blame is that man for what he did. A broken bar and Agni willing he's burning in hell. One can only hope. Bakugo agrees. Mitsuki wiped her tears away. Okay, that's enough crying, she says, patting Izuku's arm as he slowly pulls away. Thank you Izuku, I needed the Now, why don't you tell me about how your life's been? I want to know everything. So Izuku told her about his childhood, omitting some parts that he thought she didn't need to know, speaking fondly about his time with Uncle and Aizawa, trying to gloss over his time in the JDC but begrudgingly telling her when she fixes him with a glare that only a mother could pull off. Soon they're eating the dinner she had made and laughing at some stories that Izuku had from his time running the streets, as well as Mitsuki's own stories from when she and Inko were younger. So your mother is slowly lowering me to the ground, Mitsuki started, and everything's going fine. We thought we'd be able to get down and out the front gate before the teacher even knew we were gone. Well, we didn't account on the fact that the teacher wouldn't be out of the room for long. He bursts through the door and demands to know where I am. This of course breaks your mother's concentration, and I would have fallen to my death or injury if I hadn't have latched onto the ledge. Bakugo burst out laughing as Izuku chuckled. So here I am, hanging on this ledge with 3 stories underneath me, and I can hear the stupidest conversation I've ever heard going on above. She laughed as she began mimicking Inko and the teacher. Where's Mitsuki? Oh, I think she went to the bathroom. Well then, how come I didn't see her? She runs really fast. She shook her head. Meanwhile I'm doing all I can to haul myself up to look into the window, and when I did, who do I see but Nemurikiyama. Midnight, Izuku exclaimed. The very same, she confirmed. She opens the window. Doesn't help me up. She leans out and says, so, you just hanging out? They all burst out laughing as Mitsuki tries to continue, and I say, well, isn't it obvious that I've fallen for you? And she got so flustered that she almost fell out of the window herself. I can't imagine Midnight getting flustered, Izuku says as Bakugo laughs. Oh, back then she liked to think she was so suave and cool. She snorted, but you even looked at her for too long and she would get flustered. She sighed. She got me into that room and I thought I was in the clear, when who walks in but Hisashi Yamada, the loud mouth of UA. He pops into the room and immediately screams, Yo Mitsuki, what are you doing here? And I get caught. The 2 boys laughed again as Mitsuki smiled. I got 3 more weeks of detention, and Inko got 2 for aiding and abetting. Made it sound like I was a fucking criminal. Were you? Izuku asked with a grin. I can neither confirm nor deny that with Katsuki here, she drawled as Bakugo rolled his eyes. Izuku chuckled as he checked his watch. I gotta get going. I'm supposed to be home before curfew. Well, don't be a stranger, Mitsuki said as she stood up alongside her son, walking with them to the front door. I expect you to be coming around here at least once a week. I promise to drop in as much as I can, he said. Goodbye, Aunt Mitsuki. She waved him off as Bakugo walked alongside him. Walk you to the train, he said gruffly, hands in his pockets. Your mum's cool, Izuku said. HMPH, old hag likes to talk about her glory days, he grumbled, though a small fond smile made its way onto his lips. You should hear the story about the time she met my old man. I'll keep that in mind, he chuckled, stepping onto the platform as the train pulled into the station. Thank you for this cack and ... I needed it. Don't mention it, nerd, he scoffs. Just so you know, this doesn't change a thing. I'm gonna beat you and become number 1 in our class. Just because the old hag has a soft spot for you doesn't mean I'm gonna hold back. Alright, Izuku accepted. Then you better understand that I won't make that easy for you. He stepped onto the train and turned around, giving him a challenging smirk. Good luck, number 2. The doors closed as Bakugo began to scream at him. Don't think you can get all cocky, dick. I'll kill ya. Izuku sighed happily as he sat down, looking out the window with a smile on his face. Things are looking up, eh, Midoriya? He asked himself as the train sped along. Hours earlier, Aizawa hung up his phone and walked back over to where Paku was sitting, looking down at a case file. You know you didn't need to come with me, right? Aizawa asked as he sat down next to him. This isn't even an actual case. I'm just following up on some things. I know, but anything that involves the Dragon of the West concerns me. Paku sniffed, closing the file with a snap. I just want to get the full picture of Midoriya's time with him, Aizawa grumbled. And I want to find out what he had planned for the boy. Aizawa sighed as the door buzzed open and 2 armed guards walked out. This way, raise your head, Whiplash, one said, beckoning the 2 heroes forward. They walked in silence as they were escorted down narrow hallways, blank, solid steel doors lining the walls. This place is very different from the JDC, or even the municipal jail. Tartarus is where they house the worst of the worst. Paku sniffed disdainfully. Its security is heightened and the guards, armed. I don't think I need to tell you what would happen if it were anything less. No, you don't, Aizawa says as the guards stop at one of the doors. He's a minimum security threat, one of them stated, but still, don't hand him anything, and keep your limbs clear of the bars. Got it, Erasure said as the door slid open, revealing a room with bars cutting it in half. On the other side of the bars sat an old man. His grey hair was long with a bald spot at the front. It was shaggy and unkempt just like the beard upon his face. He wore a simple prison uniform that was stretched by his rotund figure. Currently he was seated cross-legged atop a simple mat, a hot cup of tea in his hands. His eyes were closed as he sipped the tea, slowly lowering it as he opened his golden eyes and looked at the 2 men. Eraserhead, Whiplash, what a pleasant surprise, he said jovially, appearing to be genuine in his happiness to see them. Have a seat. I'm sorry there's no chairs in here, but the mats are mostly comfortable. Paku sneers and remains standing, while Aizawa sits down across from Mr. Soron, he starts, only to stop as Io laughs. Please, I believe we are all friends here. Mostly. He adds, giving Paku a side glance, call me uncle. Everyone does. Aizawa hesitates for a moment. Uncle, he starts carefully. I'm here to speak with you about Izuku Midoriya. Io's jovial expression falls into one of concern. Has something happened to the boy? He asks worriedly. Is he alright? He's doing just fine, Aizawa assures the man, but I wanted to talk with you about his time living in your foster home. Io sighs with a reminiscent smile. Those were good days. He was the oldest child living there. The others, when there were others, were 5 or younger, so we connected a little better than the younger ones. He set his tea down on the floor and settled his hands into his lap. He was an angry, sad boy when he came into my care. I did not know the exact specifics of his former home until he told me himself, but I knew he needed guidance. So I slowly earned his trust and taught him what I could about life. He was a fast learner, and soaked up all the lessons I could give him, though now that I think about it, I wondered as Hen put a finger to his chin. The lessons with the ladies never seemed to stick. What were your plans for the boy? Paku interrupted, ignoring Aizawa's warning glare as he stepped forward. My plans for him? Well, I had thought to maybe adopt him and have him stay with me permanently. A boy needs a stable home to be able to achieve his dreams and flourish. So you're a humanitarian now? Paku scoffed. You expect me to believe you taught this boy your fighting style to give him a better life? I taught him the art of firebending to help him control his anger and focus his mind, Io said evenly, closing his eyes as he crossed his arms. Those of us with the inner fires of Agni are hot-tempered, and quick to lash out. While I will admit that these forms can be used for battle, they off the secondary purpose of containing that anger and focusing it into something productive. Were you trying to teach Izuku Midoriya and guide him to restart the Caldera Syndicate? Paku demanded to know. I opened his eyes, looking at Paku in confusion. Why would I want to do that? I'm the one who helped dismantle the syndicate. Aizawa's eyes widened as Paku spluttered. I see you are confused. He sighed. Not many know this after all, but after the death of my son, Lieutenant, I quit the syndicate to find inner peace, and achieved it after 4 long years housed in the temples of the Shaolin monks. It is they who helped me refine my firebending and taught me how to control that fire, instead of letting it control me. When I returned to Japan, I put in an anonymous tip and had my brother and his cohorts arrested. He gives them a sad smile. I know that I have done a lot of bad in my life, and I know there is nothing I can do to fully redeem myself, but I have put no more evil in the last 20 years. I took Izuku in and trained him because he reminded me of my deceased son. I did what I could to help him out of that dark part of his life, and hope that he continues upon the right path. Even while I am in here. Paku scoffed at this and turned away from the man when Aizawa glared at him once more. He is continuing on the right path, Aizawa said. He enrolled into UA, and achieved the highest score in the school's history. Io grins as he puffs out his chest. I taught him everything he knows. Is he doing well in the school? The first day was today, but from what I've seen he will go very far as a hero. You have no idea how much it warms my heart to hear this. If you see him, please, tell him I am proud of him. I will. A knock at the door made Aizawa stand. Thank you for your time, uncle. Hopefully I will be able to visit again soon. And I'll talk with the administrator, see what we can do about getting you some visitation hours so you can see Izuku. That would be wonderful. Io sighs. You have a good day. Raise your head. You too, Whiplash. Paku just sneers as he walks out. Aizawa gives him a small bow before following, the guards quickly flanking them as they walk out. Paku stays silent until they're out of Tartarus. I don't trust that man, he muttered. I know he is up to something, and it all centers around Midoriya. Midoriya has shown no signs of following Soren's younger self into a life of crime. Aizawa says sharply. Don't you mean uncle? He sneers. Aizawa took a calming breath. Midoriya is a model student with a bright future, he states, glaring at the man, before walking towards his car. Give him the benefit of the doubt. Paku narrows his eyes. Are you sure your feelings for the boy haven't blinded you to his faults? He asked, making Aizawa stop. You're close with the boy, you've trained him, how do you know he's not just playing you? Aizawa turned his head slightly, giving the man a measured glance. How do you know your hatred for Io hasn't blinded you to his good qualities? He asked, looking away. He's still young, Paku, and deserves better. With that, Aizawa stepped into his car, leaving Paku standing alone in the empty park. Izuku trudged into class, yawning as he gave a half-hearted wave to Uraraka. Hiya Midoriya, she greeted. You look tired. Train was stopped for 2 hours last night when I tried to head home, he mumbled as he sat down in his chair. I didn't get to sleep until 1. That's bad luck, she winced. Will you be alright? I'll be fine, he said, giving her a tired smile. The conversation ended as more people began walking in. Bakugo was one of the last, giving Izuku a small nod before sitting down in front of him. Soon classes started, and Izuku did his best to stay awake during math. He ended up dozing off, to be awakened by a less than impressed ectoplasm. Thankfully it was soon the afternoon, and the foundational hero class was guaranteed to wake him up. I am coming through the door like a hero, All Might exclaimed, entering the room in a spectacular fashion as his class began to gush. It's All Might, Kirishima exclaimed. Wicked cool, Kaminari agreed. Isn't that his Silver Age costume? Welcome young heroes to the foundational hero class. The pro hero boomed, posing with his fists on his hips. In this class you will learn the fundamentals of what it takes to become a hero. And today's lesson, battle training. Instantly Izuku and Bakugo sat up a little straighter. You're going down today to Q. Bakugo laughed. This kind of training is what I live for. Whatever you say. Second place. Izuku smirked as Bakugo began to angrily splutter. Looks like we already have some eager players in the room. Don't worry young men, you'll get your chance to shine. Ha 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 ha. All Might laughed. Of course, one part of being a hero is the uniform. He pulled a remote out and clicked a button, making 2 rows of suitcases slide out of the wall. Get changed and meet me at training ground beta. Soon everyone was grabbing their uniforms and heading towards the locker rooms. Only Izuku remained seated, waiting until everyone was out before grabbing his costume. Young Midoriya, head to the locker room. You don't have much time, All Might said to the young man. I was going to change here, All Might, Izuku said respectfully, opening the case and looking inside. I don't think that's allowed young man, All Might began uncertainly. We did it yesterday. Please All Might. All Might sighed, then nodded. I'll allow it for today. but next time you'll have to change out with the others, understood? Yes sir, Izuku said, nodding his head to the man. With that All Might walked out, leaving Izuku to change out of his uniform, revealing the scars of his childhood. Many scars, especially those on his arms, were the result of training. Small uneven scars from tumbling through all kinds of terrain, and burned scars from when he had practiced with his quirk. Others were from the various fights he had gotten into, wounds from knives, and people who had ballistic-type quirks. But on his back were wounds of a different kind, lacerations made by a whip and switch, leaving long scars along the left side of his back. The kanji for demon and monster had been carved into his shoulder blade, the clean lines speaking of someone who had done so many times before, and on his rib cage, just under his arm, a brand had been pressed into his body, depicting the Christian cross. Izuku sighed as he pulled his costume out, staring at the simple green-colored robes he had taken inspiration from Uncle and based his costume on the robes that the Shaolin monks wore. Quickly he put the robes on and looked down. His right arm and left shoulder and pectoral were uncovered, while his left side was completely covered, keeping his more horrendous scars from being seen. His ankles were wrapped tightly with a lighter shade of green cloth, which also covered part of the pointed black boots on his feet. With a roll of his shoulders, Izuku gathered up his clothes and headed for the locker room, wincing when he entered and noticed that there were still quite a few students still changing. Already changed? Kirishima asked in surprise. Yeah, Izuku answered, placing his clothes into one of the lockers. He must be shy about changing around other guys. Mineta snickered, shrinking when Izuku fixed a glare on him. Cool costume though, Kaminari said, looking Izuku over. Man, look at those scars, must have been a rough training course for you, huh? Yeah. Training, Izuku mumbled, walking towards the exit. See you guys out there. Later Midoriya, Kirishima called. Man, guy's kinda cold ain't he? He asked the others after Izuku left. Not like we actually know him, Ojiro pointed out. I mean, we barely know each other as it is. True, but you'd think he'd open up more since we're all gonna be around each other for the next few years. Give him time, Sato said, pulling the cowl of his uniform over his head. I'm sure that's all he needs. Out on the training ground, Izuku and Bakugo were the first to be waiting alongside Ida. Nice pajamas, hothead. Bakugo snickered. Says the guy who put giant tacky grenades on his arms and honestly thought it made him look cool. Izuku shot back with a grin. Oh, just wait, these got a surprise in them, Bakugo said with a malicious smirk. You two are strange, Ida commented, but I'm assuming all this talk is simply just another form of your rivalry. Got it in one, Ida, Izuku said, looking the boy up and down. Nice costume by the way. Thank you. It's designed to be much more aerodynamic, though I could have done without these decorational pipes, he said, tapping on said pipes that were jutting out from his stomach. Adds character, Izuku said as more of their classmates appeared. Wow, you guys look so cool. Uraraka gushed as she walked over. I wish I had been more specific in my costume. This suit is skin tight, she whined, wiggling from side to side. Izuku blushed and averted his eyes alongside Ida, while Bakugo continued to stare at her. It won't snag on anything if it's tight, Bakugo pointed out, doing his best to keep his gaze firmly on her face. Don't complain, round face. Round face? She asked, looking slightly insulted. Before anything else could be said, All Might landed in front of them. Look at all of you, he boomed. It's important to look the part, and right now, you all look so cool. He laughed before posing once more. Now it's time to see if your skills match up. I hope you're prepared, you zygotes. All Might Sensei, Ida called with a raised hand. This area is much like the combat areas we were in during the entrance exam. Will we be conducting urban battles? Sort of. Today you'll be conducting an indoor battle scenario. But what about basic training? Tsu asked curiously. The best teacher is experience. Having said that, today you'll be going up against your own classmates. No easily defeated mindless robots here. Isn't that dangerous? Uraraka fretted. How bad can I hurt the other team? Bakugo asked. Doesn't my cape look magnifique? Aoyama purred. Let me explain, All Might exclaimed, before pulling a small handbook out. Alright, today's battle scenario is this. A team of villains have procured a weapon of mass destruction, and the heroes have to stop them. Heroes win this exercise by either securing the weapon, or capturing all the villains, while the villains win if they manage to keep the weapon out of hero hands or capture the heroes. And to decide the teams, he pulls out a simple box. You will be drawing lots. But sir, wouldn't it make more sense to pair us up yourself? Ida asked. Think about it, Ida, Izuku started before All Might could say anything. A lot of times heroes have to partner with whoever is on scene. Right, you are young, Midoriya. Now everyone line up and grab one piece of paper out of the box. Soon everyone pulled a paper and paired up. Izuku smirked as Uraraka walked over to him. Looks like we're partners, she cheered. Yep, Izuku grinned. Alright, now that you've formed your teams, it's time to draw for the first matchup, which will be. He reached into 2 boxes that were now beside him, pulling out little white balls with letters on them. Team A versus Team B. Bakugo grinned. Finally. He laughed, giving Izuku a side glance as the other boy chuckled. Hey Bakugo, look, I'm on Team A. Second place for you again. Don't think you being on Team A has anything to do with this fight, deku. Team A will be the heroes, Team D, you're the villains. So go into the building, you all have 15 minutes to plan for the exercise. Everyone else, follow me to the observation deck. I can barely make sense of these blueprints. Izuku sighed, looking over the several sheets of paper that All Might had given them. I think it's showing the first few floors being a mix of twisting hallways and small rooms? Yep, Uraraka chirped. But after the 3rd floor the hallways disappear and you wind up with 2 floors that are simply full-sized rooms, with another winding hallways floor at the very top. Cool. Your quirk is 0 gravity, right? Yep, okay, so I think we should float up and enter into the 3rd floor. I doubt they're gonna put the bomb on any of the hallway floors. Izuku said, especially with it as quirk. Sounds about right. She agreed. So what's the plan beyond that? If Bakugo's going to do what I think, then he's gonna come straight for me, Izuku said, rolling the plans up. If that's the case, then as soon as he engages I want you to slip away and head for the bomb room. What if it's Ida? Then we are kinda screwed since he's faster than my flames. Izuku sighed. But I'm almost certain that Bakugo will be coming for us. Alright then, let's get into position. As soon as we get the go-ahead I'm gonna go down and blast deku and round face out the building, Bakugo stated to Ida. Don't you think I would be better off patrolling? Ida inquired. I'm faster, and you don't have very good mobility. Bakugo interrupted. You can't make sharp turns and deku will take advantage of that. I can easily wipe the floor with that nerd. Got it. Start. Instantly Bakugo shot out of the room, leaving Ida behind. Wait, shouldn't we have an actual plan? We're supposed to be partners. Izuku and Uraraka quietly stepped through the window, Izuku already in a defensive stance as he looked around. Infiltration success. Uraraka quietly cheered. Remember the plan, Izuku whispered as they began walking down the hall. Stairs should be right around this corner. Maybe we should go. Uraraka gasped in surprise as she stumbled slightly. Izuku steadied her, then caught movement out the corner of his eyes. Pushing Uraraka away he quickly fell back, easily dodging the explosion Bakugo sent his way. Uraraka move, he commanded, rolling forward to her side as he sent several fireballs at Bakugo, who dodged as best he could. With a sweeping wave of his arm Izuku erected a wall of fire between the two, absorbing an explosion. Go. Uraraka took off up the stairs as Izuku dropped the wall of fire, staring Bakugo down in a low defensive stance. I told you that you wouldn't be on the top forever, deku. Bakugo sneered, stalking towards his friend. Rival. Come on Bakugo, a sneak attack is so non-manly. Kirishima whined. Manly or not, it's still a viable strategy. And don't forget, young Bakugo is in the role of the villain. All Might boomed. Did you see those reflexes on Izuku though? Kaminari asked. Dude's skilled. His style is heavily influenced by Northern Shaolin Kung Fu. Ojiro commented. From what I can tell it's several different styles, but well-rounded altogether. Okay, but was it really smart to split up? Mina piped up. Wouldn't they be better off trying to take Bakugo down together? Midoriya has already shown some form of control over fire that's not his. Todoroki said plainly. Bakugo's explosions may not be full fire, but it would stand to reason that Izuku could lessen their effects. Unless he has a limit. Yaozu said. He may not be able to control a certain amount of fire, or be able to produce fire over a certain temperature. He might not. Todoroki countered. These last 2 days Midoriya has consistently produced fire without any adverse. My father who'll overheat after using his quirk too much. Couldn't he just use that lightning move Uraraka told us about? Mina asked. I think that'd be easier than actually fighting. Young Midoriya was warned against using that attack. All Might said, gaining his students' attention. It's too powerful and could lead to serious injury in this scenario. Izuku grunted as he pressed the attack, quick jabs and kicks sending fire at Bakugo, who easily dodged the fire and sent his own explosions back at Izuku. Izuku weaved between the explosions with nimble footwork, eyes widening when Bakugo suddenly appeared in front of him. Game over deku. Bakugo snarled, only to growl in anger when Izuku easily blocked his attack, producing flaming daggers from his hands and slashing at Bakugo. The two traded glancing blows until Bakugo kicked Izuku back, grinning as one of his gauntlets flashed red. It's ready. What's ready? Izuku questioned, tense and ready to counter anything Bakugo sent after him. You were making fun of these gauntlets before we started. Bakugo sneered. But if those nerds in the support department made these right, then they've been storing up my sweat for one big explosion. He leveled the gauntlet at Izuku, who tensed further as a small pin sprang out. No, Bakugo, don't pull that pin. You could kill him. He won't die so long as he dodges. Bakugo laughed as he pulled the pin and sent a powerful explosion at Izuku, who quickly conjured a shield of fire in front of him, only for his defense to be overwhelmed, sending him flying back as the explosion tore through the side of the building. What the hell was that? Ida questioned, broken from his monologue as the building shook. Uraraka quickly turned on her radio. Izuku, what happened? She called over the radio. Izuku, young Midoriya, are you alright? Midoriya, come in. All Might called into the radio as Kirishima shook his head. Man, that was powerful. There's no way Midoriya's walking away from that without an injury. Kirishima worried. Why would Bakugo even use that? He could have killed him. Kaminari exclaimed. Put the rest of the building in danger too. What if he had hit a load-bearing wall? Yae Orozu fretted. I don't think he cares so long as he wins, Tsa said bluntly. He had faith that Izuku would be able to counter the explosion. Shoto said, at the very least he should be safe from any severe burns. But that's not what he should be worried about. That concussive force in such a small space would still injure Midoriya. Bakugo, use those gauntlets again and you're disqualified. Attacks destroy the stronghold and risk damage to the weapon you're supposed to be protecting. Are you shitting me? Fine. Hey, shitty deku, you give up? A high-pitched ringing echoed in Izuku's ears as he slowly opened his eyes, finding himself lying face down on the ground. With a groan he forced himself up to a standing position, his costume slightly tattered and soot-covered, but none the worse for wear. Slowly he turned to look at Bakugo, frowning in confusion as the boy seemed to be yelling at him, his voice sounding muffled and far away. The ringing died down and he was finally beginning to hear what was being said. Up to you. Submit. Young Midoriya, are you alright? Stay still, I'm going to stop the fight. Fine. Izuku slurred out. Don't stop the fight. You don't sound too well, Midoriya, Uraraka said worriedly over the radio. Maybe you should listen to All Might. I said don't stop the fight, Izuku ordered, getting into his stance as Bakugo exploded towards him. You need to learn to stay down, Deku. Bakugo snarled, fist cocked back. But a sweeping kick from Izuku sends him crashing down, tumbling across the ground. His eyes widened as he quickly rolls away as Izuku was suddenly jumping towards him, stomping his foot down where he had been before, sending more fire his way. Izuku gave him no breathing room as he pressed the attack, a righteous fury light in his eyes as he allowed his anger to fuel his fire. Bakugo used his explosions to propel himself away from Izuku, flying backwards up the stairs and into the larger fourth-floor room. Izuku hot on his heels and forced back into a defensive position as Bakugo begins to use the extra space to his advantage, dancing around Izuku and hitting him with ranged attacks before moving again. Frustrated, Izuku lets a puff of fire escape his mouth before he suddenly rolls forward, spinning around on his shoulders and twisting his hips, sending flames spiraling out around him as he spun, bathing the room in fire and clipping Bakugo in the side, sending him tumbling to the ground as Izuku springs back to his feet, a flick of his wrist sending a flaming whip at his opponent. The fire warmed to the touch as it lashed towards Bakugo's neck. Bakugo narrowly avoids the whip and raises his arm, eyes widening as he sees a crack in his gauntlet, already leaking nitroglycerin as Izuku sends his whip forward again. Deku 8. Bakugo started, his warning coming too late as the flames touched the liquid and an explosion shook the very foundation of the building. As the building shakes, it gives Uraraka the edge she needed to finally grab onto the bomb. I got it. She cheered as All Might proclaimed the heroes the winners. Uraraka celebrated as Ida walked towards her, pulling his helmet on. Congratulations, he said warmly. You did good today. We need medical bots to the fourth floor. Stat. A number. Uraraka whispered as she and Ida shared a look before running towards the stairs, thundering down them in time to see the state of their friends. Both were barely conscious on the ground. Izuku was lying back against the wall, uniform covered in dark soot, and several new lacerations and cuts from the now destroyed gauntlet. Bakugo himself was lying face down on the floor, covered in burns and weakly coughing as he forced himself to crawl towards Izuku. Deku, a broken bar, he rasped out. Deku, God damn it, Izuku, answer me, you idiot. He snapped, body beginning to tremble at the sight of Izuku, unmoving and eyes closed. I tried to warn you, you dipshit. I tried ! Fuck a broken bar. Izuku coughed, making Bakugo stop. I didn't know what you were yelling, a broken bar, Izuku whispered hoarsely, cracking an eye open to glare at Bakugo. Ears were still fucked from the first explosion. A broken bar, he gave a harsh cough. You're lucky your gear kept you from third-degree burns, a broken bar. Bakugo let his body collapse, giving a weak chuckle. Yeah. Guess I'm lucky. Fuck me, I'm tired. A broken bar, he groaned as he forced himself to roll over onto his back, staring at the ceiling as Uraraka and Ida began to fuss over them. You still ain't shit to cure a broken bar. Hey. I know Kakana broken bar. Soon the medical bots arrived and loaded the two onto stretchers, Ida and Uraraka accompanying them to Recovery Girl. You got lucky, the older woman chided as she kissed Bakugo, making the young man sigh in relief as his burns disappeared. Minor burns and exhaustion for you, Bakugo, but Midoriya, those lacerations won't be healing completely. She tutted as she kissed Izuku, who grimaced in discomfort as skin knitted itself back together. Soon the worst of his wounds were healed, leaving behind a fresh new scar that started at the left corner of his jaw and went up to his nose. That's a downer, Izuku sighed, wincing when the old lady and Uraraka glared at him. What? It's not like I intended for that grenade to blow up. Yeah, Bakugo agreed. Don't even know how the leak happened. Be that as it may, I want you to understand the severity of these wounds. You could have easily lost limb from this. But we didn't, Izuku muttered, wincing as Recovery Girl smacked him on the back of the head. Okay, ow. She's right, Midoriya, Ida chimed in. You shouldn't take this so lightly. Yeah, Uraraka echoed. Izuku and Bakugo shared a look. We'll be more careful in the future, Izuku said. Yeah, what the nerd said. Bakugo scoffed, cringing as Recovery Girl smacked him as well. You old hag. I agreed. Smack. Don't disrespect me, sonny. Recovery Girl fumed as Bakugo rubbed his head. Now, you two should be fine to head back to class. Thanks, Recovery Girl, Izuku said, standing and walking towards the door. Bakugo grumbled as he followed his friend with Ida and Uraraka bringing up the rear. That fight was intense. Uraraka sighed, bumping into Bakugo's side, making the boy tense. Oh sorry, did that hurt? No, he said defensively, making Uraraka giggle nervously. You two truly are tenacious if you're able to walk away from injuries like that. Ida commended them both. I've had worse, they chorused, making them glare at each other. Quit copying me, they chorused again, making tick marks appear. You're copying me, deku, just like when we were younger. Like I'd want to copy you second place. You wanna go again, Erd? Uraraka and Ida sweat dripped as the two bickered all the way until they entered the observation deck. Midoriya, Bakugo, Kirishima shouted, running up to the two. That was seriously an epic fight. You guys had us on the edge of the seats the entire time. Yeah, Mina gushed. You guys were awesome. Honestly thought he had you for a second there, Bakugo, Soro said. But you were matching him blow for blow. And you both looked awesome, Mina shouted again. You both looked fabulous, Aoyama started, only to be to the side by Mina. You guys looked so awesome, she exclaimed. All Might chuckled as he watched the class interact. All right students, let's continue on with the lesson, he called, making them settle down. The MVP for that last match was Ida Tenya. Can anyone tell me why? While Yaorazu explained why Ida was the MVP, Izuku found a spot to sit down, wincing slightly as he did. You did good out there, Todoroki said stoically, making Izuku jump, having not realized the boy was beside him. Thanks, he said sheepishly. All honestly, I'm surprised things didn't turn out badly. A broken bar. It usually does with fire, Todoroki said, walking away before Izuku could say anything. Guess he's had bad experience. A broken bar, Izuku mumbled, his hand unconsciously going to a small burn he had on his forearm. You okay, Midoriya? Ida asked him as he walked over with Uraraka and Bakugo. Fine, tired, Izuku said with a strained smile. Who's up next? Team B versus Team I, Uraraka said, kinda worried. Todoroki gives off a very indifferent vibe. He's definitely confident, Bakugo sneered, looking at the monitors. Smug, icy hot bastard. Insulting another student is unbecoming of a hero. Ida started. Can it 4 eyes? Bakugo barked. 4 eyes? Enough, Izuku commanded, making both boys look at their irritated friends sitting against the wall. Sheesh, my concussion isn't even fully healed and you're both yelling right beside me. Apologies, Midoriya, Ida said with a slight bow. Was, Bakugo scoffed, but didn't try and restart the fight as the next battle began. Izuku watched as Shoji stepped forward and began monitoring the building with his other arms. There was a pause as Shoji informed Todoroki of something. Then Shoji left the building. What are you doing? A broken bar, Izuku muttered, eyes narrowing when Todoroki froze. The entire building. Memories of unrelenting cold flashed through his mind and he shivered before looking over to Bakugo as everyone gaped, and Bakugo met his stare. Both had recognized the display of power and its message. Holy Kaminari started. That's overkill, a broken bar, Jiren muttered. He's completely immobilized Ojiro and Hagakure, Mina shouted. Not true, Izuku spoke up, getting everyone's attention. His plan is flawed. He only froze their feet, so if he gets too close to one of them they may be able to get capture tape around them. Not only that, but Ojiro's tail is unfrozen, and has an even farther reach than his arms. He scoffed as Todoroki walked within 3 feet of Ojiro. All Ojiro would have to do is gut check him with his tail and wrap the capture tape around Himo broken bar. They all turned back to the monitors, watching as Todoroki simply walked past Ojiro and touched the weapon. He got psyched out. Izuku sighed in disappointment. Sometimes that's all that's needed, Yaoyorozu said, giving Izuku a measured glance. As heroes, if we can psych out the enemy, then we have a chance to end a confrontation before any lives are lost. And on the flip side, if that wasn't a weapon, but a VIP, then a psyched out hero gets people killed. Izuku drawled. Everyone looked stunned, most having not thought of the other side of the battle trial. Dude. You're smart, Suro said. Izuku shrugged. I used to psych out people all the time. A bit of flame and an intense stare tends to get results. And what results were you trying to reach? Yaoyorozu sniffed disdainfully. Whatever was needed, princess, Izuku muttered, looking away as Todoroki and the others came back. From here Izuku simply watched the battle trials, wincing in sympathy as Yaoyorozu basically had to fight Jiru and Kaminari alone, as her partner was simply content to watch her work and leer at her. After the last after-action report was finished and All Might took off, everyone walked to the locker rooms. Izuku followed, but didn't change, simply sat on one of the benches as everyone talked. As soon as the last person left the shower he stood and moved that way. Shy Midoriya? Mineta tried to heckle him as he passed. Strong, but worried about size. Knew you were overcompensating. Izuku turned his eyes to Mineta, who froze under the surprisingly cold glare. Careful Mineta, he sneered, letting a flame sprout from his fingertips. Playing with fire is dangerous. With that he cut the fire and kept walking. You have like no preservation skills, Kaminari said as Kirishima and Bakugo laughed at the pop-off student. SSS, shut up, it's just posturing, Mineta whined, trying to hide his fear. No, he psyched you out. Dude, that's what Midoriya was talking about, Kaminari said, wide eyes. No shit Sparky, Bakugo scoffed, shouldering his bag as he walked out. While I won't condone your distasteful and rude comment, Ida began, glaring at Mineta and making him shrink, I also can't just let Midoriya's actions slide. That could have been perceived as a threat. I think it was merely a warning, Tokoyami said as he buttoned up his shirt. Our schoolmate is a secretive one, with many scars. Both physical and mental. So deep, Kirishima said with a grin. And I agree, if Midoriya doesn't want to undress or shower with us, then that's his choice, not like it's against the rules, right? Still a little weird, Mineta grumbled. At least he's not a perv, Sato said, following Suro out. Soon the locker room was empty, the only sound was the shower running. A few minutes later it shut off and Izuku walked out, looking about as he went before heading to his locker, unlocking it and pulling his things out, pulling his pants on as the door opened and Todoroki walked in, already dressed and looking at his phone. Midoriya, I forgot that I wanted to ask you. He stopped as he looked up and saw the marks on his back. Izuku turned around quickly. Shit, he said under his breath as he grabbed his undershirt and put it on. Thought everyone was gone. Sorry, he muttered, turning away from Todoroki to continue changing. Midoriya. Why a broken bar? Todoroki started, unsure of what to say as the boy finished getting dressed. Forget it, Izuku said curtly, throwing his jacket on and walking past Todoroki, who shook his head and quickly followed him. How can I forget that? Todoroki demanded to know, following Izuku down the hall. Midoriya, is everything alright at home? Everything's fine, Izuku snapped, not looking back at Todoroki. Look, this happened a long time ago. The people who did it aren't on the street anymore, so just drop it. But Todoroki started, stopping when Kaminari and Akuko came around the corner. Oh hey guys, Akuko chirped, was wondering where you guys were. Everything alright? Everything's fine, Izuku said with a tired smile, just had a bit of trouble getting dressed. Muscles stiff and all, you know. A good massage would help you bro, Kaminari said wisely. There's a good spot in Hiyashi. I'll be fine, Izuku dismissed, but it looks like you guys were busy, so I'll see ya, he said, going around them and into the classroom. A little squirrely, isn't he? Kaminari asked as he and Akuko kept walking. Yeah, but you can't fault him for it. True, a broken bar. Todoroki stood in the hallway for a while, doing his best to keep his emotions and thoughts under control as he walked into class. He looked at Midoriya, who was half listening to a story that Kirishima was telling, his gaze far off. Todoroki sat down at his desk, filled with a nervous energy as he resolved